Let's take a look at the tight end situation. As we talked about before, Rob Gronkowski goes in the first round. Jordan Reed's been going in the top of the fourth round, and as you can see, Olsen in the bottom of the fourth, Kelsey in the sixth, Walker in the late sixth, Fleener continues into the seventh, and you got Ertz and Eifert going. Ertz is in the bottom of the seventh, Eifert is in the bottom of the eighth, etc. Let's take a quick look at our list. And we've got Jones right now in the sixth. We may be able to take him a little later than that if we want to try. We may sneak into the seventh. But so we've got open right now the fourth and the fifth round. I'd like to try and get a little value in this position. In other words, try and pick a little bit later. Tight end, Jordan Reed was fantastic. He's incredible. If he stays healthy, he could be phenomenal. And that's the problem. He's got concussion issues. And so, but the top of the fourth is not a bad situation. Olsen had a perfect season. It was his 10th year last year. He's staying healthy. It's a fantastic team, fantastic situation. Delanie Walker was the number one targeted wide receiver in 2015, and he's in the bottom of the sixth. We have got Marvin Jones in the sixth, so we'd have to go up to the fifth. But look at all these tight ends. We got Fleener, Eifert, and Ertz. Now, Eifert's got problems. He's coming back, and we don't know when he's coming back, but he was a top one or two tight end before he got hurt. I think he missed the last 4 games last year. And you got Ertz if you want to back off that, and maybe Fleener falls to you. So I'm almost looking at, tight end in the seventh. And we've got, as I said, we've got Eifert, Ertz, and I can't spell, Fleener, as all possible options in the seventh round. And, of course, my favorite, Delanie Walker, if we were lucky to get Delanie. Let's put him at the top. So, as how things progress, sometimes you're in the sixth and you decide, hey, maybe I'll take one of these guys in the sixth and hopefully Jones lasts to the seventh. That kind of a thing as the draft flows along. So now we have a kind of a long shot, not a long shot, a value position at at tight end, looking in the bottom of the seventh pick for one of those tight ends, if not somebody else who happens to be around there. Now, assuming we go heavy receiver in the first few rounds and maybe even take one in the first round, and we're hoping to take a receiver in the second and the third round, depending on who's available. Fourth round, we can try and start to look at some running backs. And if I could click the right button. So we're looking here at people that may fall to us. Ingram would be wonderful. He fell to us in the fourth. Doesn't look like he will. 306. Lacey, I'd like to stay away from. I'd like to stay away from McCoy. Forte's a possibility. I don't really like what's going on in this area. None of my favorite players are there unless somebody falls into my lap. But certainly those are options. I kind of, Latavius Murray may not be a bad guy, but it looks like I could get him in the fifth round. And again, let's go back to our sheet. So we could take Latavius Murray in the fifth. God, could we take him in the fifth? I don't know. 5'10", and he's going at 507. That's probably a bit of a risk. So that's a tough one. I mean, we could take Dion Lewis. Let's put him at the fifth. Let's put, I'm doing this with Latavius Murray in the fifth. And another kind of a wild card, obviously, Danny Woodhead. Let's put him in the fifth also. He's a guy that finished third last year in PPR. Danny Woodhead finished third in the NFL in 2015 in PPR. Yet now we just don't trust him. Here we are. He's the 20th running back taken in the fifth round. So he's always a guy that, if you're sitting there in the draft and it's the fourth or fifth and you're a lot of guys went, he's a guy who you would think you could take then and he'd be a value pick. And let's also put one of my favorite guys, Duke Johnson. Now, Duke Johnson caught, I think it was 64 balls last year. And they had a, tough, Cleveland had a tough year. Everything went wrong. He's a great catcher of the ball. He, they're probably going to be behind a lot. They're not going to be a good team. Sometimes when teams are having a difficult year, they throw the ball. Well, he's one of their valuable receivers, even though he's a running back. So even though Cleveland may have a tough year, Duke Johnson still may be a productive back and may be a value pick in the 5th round. So we got a lot of options here in the 5th. And if we take a running back in the 1st round, we'll end up with 2 by round 5. Not a bad thing. So depending on what we do in the 1st, we may want to target either a receiver or a running back in the 4th round. Let's take another look here. We've already talked about a lot of these guys. Ingram probably won't fall to us. Forte we could take if we trust him. And this guy's an interesting character. Thomas Rawls. Not sure how much he'll catch, but he could be fantastic. Let's go look at receivers real quick. We get into the 2nd, 3rd, 4th round. We've got Hightower, or Sammy Watkins should be gone. Let's go down a little farther. Guys we'll probably have is Macklin in the 4th, Gordon Matthews, Baldwin, which we hopefully could slide on him a little bit. Fitzgerald, another receiver for Arizona, Floyd. Dante Moncrief is a guy that people are really excited about. And I am too. I was a little worried last year. Things just didn't happen the way I thought they would. But Moncrief could be a guy we could take in the 4th. That is a little early, but what is early? And Parker's another. Now I completely lost what I was doing. Did you see that? The thing went nuts on me. Or is that the other sheet? All right. Well, the other guy was Parker, wherever Parker it may be. Come on. And here's Devontae Parker. Let's put his name down our sheet as a guy we could take in the 4th. A little early. That would be early for him, but that would be early for him if we wanted to take Parker in the 4th. Now, when I say early, if you like a guy, if you really think a guy is going to be a wide receiver 2 or a very good wide receiver 3, and you're going to take him a round ahead or maybe a round and a half ahead, do it. Don't worry about him being too far out of kilter. In other words, if we go back to round 1 and we're looking at the overall, let's go back and look at that real quick here. Look at the overall, round 1. And as I pointed out, if one of these running backs, Todd Gurley, David Johnson, or Ezekiel Elliott fall to the 10th, even though I don't like taking running backs on a PPR in the 1st round, at the bottom of the 1st round, that could be a lot of value. So we could then taking one of those guys. But another alternative is we've got Allen, we've got Jeffries, we've got Cooks, we've got Evans, who I'm kind of a little worried about, and of course got Jordy Nelson, who I've kind of ignored. Even Allen Robinson. Those are guys that we can just reach up a little bit and take them with our 10th pick and not be that dog. Don't you hear? Those dogs are barking. So we've got a lot of options in that 1st round, whether go running back or receiver. We'll just have to see how it goes. And with this format, quarterbacks are players that you can take in the later rounds. You only have one starting quarterback. So there's a lot of value there. If you just glance down here, you get into Carson Palmer, who's going in the bottom of the 8th. You've got Eli Manning, who last year finished, I think, 7th or 8th quarterback in fantasy points in 2015. He's going on the 9th round. Phillip Rivers finished 10th last year. Disaster season. You would think it could only get better with Keenan Allen coming back and hopefully playing the year. You can get him in the 10th round, top of the 10th. Carr's another interesting guy. Cousins last year had just a phenomenal end of the year, who you would think could end up being a top 12, top 10 quarterback. Boom! 11th round. So you got a ton of guys here stemming anywhere between the 9th and the 11th round. Blake Bortles was the 3rd rated quarterback last year. Supposedly their whole offense is going to change. They're going to try and run more, so he's kind of dropped down. Tom Brady's going to have the 4-game suspension, so he'd probably fall a little more on this chart. If you want to take him later, then you can double up with somebody and use somebody in the first 4 rounds. I don't really want to do that. So let's take a quick look here. Let's see if what we can do is, Carson's not a bad guy. I'm not sure if he's going to really last to the 8th round. But let's go back to our DTS map, and this is going to put quarterback, 8th round. And we're going to think about all the possibilities coming down this chart. If we've got some other guys jumping out at us, again, we could go to the 9th round and still have a potential to get Eli, Rivers, and even Cousins if we want to reach down to Cousins and take Cousins as our first quarterback. So we're going to start with that, and we're going to say this, and we're going to say QB in the 10th. And then we'll just see how things flow from there. And here's our actual draft room. And I'm just going to do this. We're going to put some guys in the queue. Let's see if this works. How do I do that? Jeez. Q. I'm just going to come right down this list. Oh, I don't want him in my queue. Let's dump Freeman. Gurley. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, why do I not like AJ Green? And obviously this list is a little different. And there's Ezekiel. And there's AJ Green. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So there's my top 9 players. And we'll see what happens when we get to that point. And then we got to decide, are we going to take crazy chances and do something a little different than we want to? I'm almost tempted to consider taking Alshon Jeffries, as we talked about here, and pull one of these 3 guys, Keenan Allen, Brandon Cooks, or Alshon Jeffries, and take them in the first round if one of these guys don't fall. So there's our little pre-queue before the draft. If we scroll up a little bit, still have 54 minutes before the draft starting. And looks like there's 2 people in the draft room, us and somebody else. I don't see this draft room having a message board. I would think it's here somewhere. I'm probably just not seeing it. Oh, here it is up here. So the Dynasty League football guys are in. Oh, actually they did something, but the huddle is in. So continue to prepare. And part of the preparation is this target player list is we're trying to feel out the 16 rounds of the draft, in this particular instance 16 rounds. Try and look at targets in every round as you can and different options, and also remind you who your favorite players are, or players you're trying to pick. And as you get into the later rounds, there's flyer guys that are more of long shots. Let's see if I can't find the page I was on. One of them I'm going to pick, not in this draft. I'm not saying he's the greatest flyer, but Jordan Howard, a rookie for Chicago. He's going in the bottom of the 14th round in the ADP for high stakes. So I'm going to put him at the 13th round. As a matter of fact, we'll put him at the 13th round. We're in the bottom of the 13th. Okay, I'll put him there. But when you have players like this who are going to be late round picks, you're looking at trying to find guys who you think have potential value. Jeremy Langford had a great year last year, but maybe he's really not the guy. His average per carry wasn't really that high. He really saved a lot of fantasy players last year on free agency when Forte went down. Had some really nice games, but Howard may be a guy who steals that job by the middle of the season, and these are the kind of things you're trying to target, trying to look for, trying to forecast, and you want to get them on your sheet where you can take them. So you're not just drafting and all of a sudden somebody takes Jordan Howard and you go, oh yeah, I forgot him. Well, that's why you're looking at ADP, and that's why you're trying to put him in a targeted position that you can take him. So you may want to consider taking him, and I'll just put round 12. If it gets to a point in the draft and a lot of players are gone, and you say, I really want to get Howard as a sleeper, and maybe you take him a little earlier, because once you start getting down lower into the draft, you will find players that just all of a sudden they're starting to go in positions where you didn't think they would go, because people are looking at their roster, and ADP means less and less the deeper you get in the draft.